As for Hanahan, there was a sense before the season he might ink an extension to stick around Calgary long term. But the way things have gone in southern Alberta, all signs point to the American defenseman being shipped out before the deadline. The March 8th trade deadline is now basically 2 months away, which means NHL GMs, especially the proactive ones, could start making meaningful swaps any moment now. Any conversation about the 2023 deadline has to start with the Calgary Flames. The team has a slew of quality veteran players on expiring deals, and with a serious uphill battle to make the playoffs, it's almost certain Calgary will be the most sought-after seller between now and March. No team wins a title without a strong contingent of senders, and Elias Lindholm's sturdy two-way game could be exactly the boost a contender like the Boston Bruins need to make a deep playoff run. Lindholm's point-per-game season from a couple years ago might be a bit of an aberration, but the 29-year-old Swede can be trusted in any situation and might flourish offensively again if surrounded by more talented flanks. On the back end, Flames GM Craig Conroy will be fielding calls on both Chris Tanev and Noah Hanahan. The former isn't flashy, but his lay-it-on-the-line approach is exactly what teams value on their second and third D pair in the playoffs. At 34 years old, there isn't much Tanev hasn't seen throughout his long career. As for Hanahan, there was a sense before the season he might ink an extension to stick around Calgary long term. But the way things have gone in southern Alberta, all signs point to the American defenseman, who turns 27 later this month, being shipped out before the deadline. In all three cases, the return for Calgary would be bolstered if the traded player signed an extension with his new club. The other Canadian squad that could be in the middle of the action is the Montreal Canadiens. Now, the Habs have performed better than expected this year, living on the fringes of the Eastern Conference playoff battle. Still, everything is being done with an eye to the future in Montreal, and it's hard to believe the Canadiens won't ultimately sell a few pieces that could bring them something that would help down the road. Monahan might have been moved at last year's trade deadline had he not been injured at that time. The 29-year-old's 30-goal days are long gone, but he remains an incredibly useful player who can line up at both center and wing. It's easy to see Monahan, who's making just $1.9 million against the cap on a one-year deal, anchoring a fantastic third line on a contender, kicking in an ample offense while taking care of his own zone and killing penalties. Speaking of the defensive zone, you have to wonder if teams will be calling Montreal GM Kent Hughes about David Savard. The 33-year-old is a coveted right-shot defenseman who plays a rigorous brand of defense, blocking shots and banging bodies. Savard also has a slightly underrated offensive element to his game and, of course, is a Stanley Cup champion from his time with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And any team that did acquire Savard would be getting him for a couple playoff charges, as his contract does not end until the summer of 2025. Okay, that's a forward and a defenseman Montreal can offer, so how about a goalie now? The Canadiens have been carrying 3 puck stoppers all year, and they've each performed pretty well. The odd man out would seem to be veteran Jake Allen, who could surely help a few teams getting inadequate play in the crease. Like Savard, Allen's contract runs through next season, so you'd be getting him as one half of a goalie duo for the next year and a half. Of course, a number of teams are going to be putting players up for auction, and it'll be very intriguing to see who lands where. Henrique scored an overtime goal to send the New Jersey Devils to the Stanley Cup Final 11 years ago. And believe it or not, the 33-year-old center has only been back to the postseason one time since then. The Ducks will not be going to the big spring dance this year, and Henrique, who has just 1 year left on his contract, still has the savvy game and goal-scoring ability to help somebody up the middle. Then there's Anaheim's California cousins up in San Jose. The bottom-feeding Sharks have a few guys on expiring deals, like Mike Hoffman, Anthony Duclair, and Kevin Labanc, who might be able to help somebody out on a forward crew. There's also veteran center Mikael Granlund, who signed through next season and is having a pretty nice year on a bad team. Now let's get a look at the full ranking. The Jets are up to number 3 this week. What a year for Winnipeg, which might be shopping around for a D-man before the deadline. The Penguins have gotten hot, pulling themselves right back into the Eastern Conference playoff race. Could they add a forward to supplement Sid and Gino? Big win for the Kraken at home in the Winter Classic as Seattle moves up to number 21 and climbs into the Western Conference wildcard race. After a great start, the Wings have been sinking. You have to think if Detroit is even remotely in the playoff race, though, the Wings will try to add rather than sell. All right, I'm Ryan Dixon. That's all the time we have, but Happy New Year and trade season to all hockey fans. Check back next week and all season long right here for the Sportsnet Power Rankings.